Hello everyone, welcome back to a new post today, and I hope you all are doing wonderfully well. Congratulations to all those who have got through the civil services, and many of those who haven't. You have a better chance next time and you can do much better. So why not start our preparation right now itself. Plan for your prelims, for your mains and for your interview. 1 year is more than sufficient to crack the UPSC civil services examination, and please trust me, it's just not rocket science at all. It's very easy, only for the syllabus to be very vast. So let's get into today right into your preparation for your next very good attempt, and let's go to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has been on a tour of the G7 for the G7 summit. He had the Quad meeting, the third Quad summit, in-person summit in Hiroshima, which had to take place in Sydney. Then he had gone to the Pacific Island nation countries, and he had the third summit for the Forum of Indo-Pacific Cooperation with the 14 Pacific Island countries, which India sees as a near area now of investment and also partnership. And Prime Minister has also promised the countries that he's going to partnership in their development and growth. And also, apart from that, he was honored with 2 civilian orders, very highest of the level, from the Fiji government and also the Papua New Guinea government as well. The Papua New Guinea heads of the state and the government showed a lot of respect towards Prime Minister Narendra Modi, hoping them that India now represents the global south and definitely will bring about a sea change with regard to the countries India represents. So India really has a leadership position with regard to the global south and in many more areas, and the voice of India is respected in many arenas, what we can see now. And the most special thing is that Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave a 10-point call to action at G7, which is very important for you to remember, because India has individual level of relation with the G7 countries. And also, apart from that, the Quad summit had come up where they discussed not very much deep things, but just definitely reviewed the working of the situation of the various working groups that were created, and apart from that also called for an open and rule-based Indo-Pacific Ocean that they always call for. So let's first get into the 10-point action plan that Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave at the G7 summit. So he said, what does this 10-point action plan? So we know that the G7 summit happened in Hiroshima in Japan, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave a 10-point call to action at the G7 summit. He said, number 1, develop inclusive food systems to protect the most vulnerable, including the marginal farmers. That's because after COVID-19 and also the climate change. Adopt millets. Part to nutritional and environmental benefits. Millets are not only environmental friendly, but also they are a superfood, and also they are being touted as the next big solution for food security. Stop food wastages to strengthen food security, and this is also being so said by India in its mission for life, which was given in the updated intended nationally determined contributions. Depoliticize global fertilizer supply chains, which is very important for agriculture. Develop alternative model to fertilizers, that is gas based and even using cleaner energy solutions like your solar energy. Develop alternative model to fertilizers. Yes, one example is the nano urea and the nano DAP, which was launched by India IFCO very recently, and we have the patent for it. Develop resilient healthcare systems. Promote holistic healthcare, pursue traditional systems of medicine, and very recently ICMR has come into agreement with the Ministry of Ayush to give something called as integrated medicine system in India now, and they are working on it. Promote digital health to ensure global universal health coverage, which we are already doing under Ayushman Bharat. Ensure mobility of healthcare professionals. We already have a healthcare mobility agreement with Australia that was recently signed. Build development models inspired by needs of developing countries, not driven by consumerism. So these are the 10 major points that were given by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. These are the call to action at the G7 summit in Hiroshima. Now let's go forward. While he was in Japan, he visited the Peace Memorial Museum at Hiroshima, which is a place of the nuclear disaster built in memory of those who died in the nuclear attack at the end of the Second World War, and also signed the visitors book there. Speaking at the G7 summit, he said that at the G7 session at global peace, stability and prosperity, which is a common objective for all. He held bilateral meetings with his British counterpart Rishi Sunak, and also spoke about returning many of the aesthetic or also the treasures which India has in Britain. There one mention was of the Kohinoor diamond as well. Meanwhile, in the first in-person meet with the Russian since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Modi assured the Russian leader Volodymyr Zelensky that India will do whatever is possible to find out a solution to the conflict. The Quad leaders too called for ending the Ukraine war through dialogue and diplomacy, while asserting that it must not be an era of war. Prime Minister Narendra Modi held, let me tell you, wide-ranging and productive talks with his Brazilian counterpart Inácio Lula da Silva, during which they discussed ways to develop and deepen their bilateral strategic partnership, especially in the sectors of defense production, trade and renewable energy. Modi and Lula also met on the sidelines of the summit at G7 Advanced Economies in Hiroshima. The meeting was between them was the first after the Brazilian leader got re-elected as a president for the third time in Brazil. Now, the two leaders also noted that this year, that is 2023, marked the 75th year of anniversary for establishment of diplomatic ties between India and Brazil, the two important BRICS nations. The G7 countries also asked all the major economies, including India and China, to commit to attaining net zero emission status by 2050, but we have committed to do so by 2070, and they called to do so at the earliest. The Quad leaders called for ending the war in Ukraine through dialogue diplomacy, while asserting that it should not be an era of war. Modi also unveiled the Mahatma Gandhi bust at the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Now, amid China's military expansion in the South China Sea and the East China Sea, Modi ji also called India is committed to protecting the sovereignty, integrity and also peaceful resolution of maritime disputes based on international law. China has various maritime disputes with the island nations and the countries across the South China Sea. Modi ji also met his Cook Islands counterpart Mark Brown to discuss various issues at the Hiroshima summit, including about the Indo-Pacific region. Prime Minister Modi said that this region is an engine for global growth, innovation and development, and called for an open, inclusive Indo-Pacific region which is free from conflicts. Prime Minister Modi then arrived to Papua New Guinea, where he became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit there, and he co-hosted the summit, that is the Forum for Indo-Pacific countries cooperating with India, the key summit between India and the 14 Pacific Island nations to boost bilateral ties, along with the co-host Mr. Marape. Now, the Tok Pisin is the official language of Papua New Guinea, and this has been in news because both the Papua New Guinea leader and also Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the translation of the Tamil classic Tirukural in the Tok Pisin language of Papua New Guinea. Tirukural is a collection of couplets on ethics, political, economic matters and love, which was written by a poet called as Tuvalu. The poet's name. So Prime Minister has often quoted Tirukural in many of his speeches and tweets, and also gifted a copy of the book to the late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who's been a very, very close friend of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So the Tirukural is a treasure of inspiring ideas that the youngsters all over the world can read and benefit from, and this was said by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, asserting that the ideas included in Tirukural are very much applicable even in the modern times. Prime Minister Modi and at the end was conferred with two highest civilian awards, and let me tell you, conferring of the highest civilian awards to India only reflects India's growing ties with the countries around the world, and also the leadership position which these countries look at India at. So he was conferred with the Companion of Order of Fiji by the Fijian counterpart for his global leadership, and this is a rare honor for a non-Fijian. The Papua New Guinea conferred the highest civilian order called as a Grand Companion of the Order of Logohu on Prime Minister Modi for championing the cause of unity in the Pacific Island countries and spearheading the cause of Global South. Let me tell you, the Forum for Indo-Pacific Cooperation with these Pacific Island nations was actually mooted by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi itself, and the second summit was held in Jaipur, and this is the third one. So very few non-residents of the island nation have received this coveted award from Papua New Guinea, and this is a very brief roundup of what had actually happened during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit for the G7 summit at Hiroshima, apart from Quad, and now the Forum for Indo-Pacific Cooperation with the Pacific Island countries, 14 in number, where India promised that it will participate in economic development growth, especially with supporting the countries with renewable and new energy to meet their climate change goals, and also to protect them from the harsh rise of sea level which these countries actually face. So this is about the roundup of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, and I hope this information was really helpful to you all to build up on answer writing. So until then, I shall see you in my next post, and very happy learning.